The child learned to walk before anyone claimed him. There was no celebration. No pack blessing. No alpha's name spoken aloud. When his mother was rejected, the pack turned away, and so did the future everyone promised her. Rowan Hale did not plan to become a mother. But when the cries echoed through a cold forest hut and no one else stepped forward, she stayed. Years passed. The boy grew strong in ways the pack never noticed. And Rowan raised him alone, never speaking of the alpha who vanished, never expecting him to return. Until one morning, the scent of power drifted back into the village. And the past Rowan buried came looking for the child she had protected. If this story already touched you, please like the video. It helps these stories reach more listeners. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far this pack reaches. The cries came at dawn. Rowan Hale heard them from the edge of the forest, faint and desperate, cutting through the mist like a blade. She stopped mid-step, her basket of herbs slipping against her hip, and turned toward the sound. The old birthing hut. No one had used it in months. The pack preferred the warmth of the main village now, the comfort of witnesses and blessings. But these cries were different. Raw, unattended, alone. Rowan moved without thinking. The door hung loose on its hinges. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of blood and fear. A woman lay on the straw pallet, her face turned toward the wall, her body trembling with exhaustion. And in the corner, wrapped in a torn blanket, a newborn wailed. Rowan knelt beside the child. His skin was pale, his fists clenched tight. No one had cleaned him. No one had spoken his name. Where are the midwives? Rowan asked softly. The woman did not answer. Rowan looked closer and recognized her. Elara, the alpha's rejected mate. The one who had been cast aside before the bond could settle. The pack had whispered about her for weeks, then stopped speaking her name altogether. Elara, Rowan said gently. He needs you. He needs nothing from me. Elara's voice was hollow. I have nothing left to give. Rowan's chest tightened. She lifted the child carefully, cradling his small weight against her chest. His cries softened, just slightly, as though sensing warmth for the first time. Then let me help. They will not allow it. Elara's eyes remained fixed on the wall. The elders have already decided. A rejected mate's child has no place here. No pack. No future. That is not for them to decide. Elara finally turned her head. Her gaze was empty. You do not understand. The alpha is gone. He will never return. And this child is the proof of his shame. Rowan said nothing. She only held the boy closer. You should leave him, Elara whispered. It would be kinder. But Rowan did not move. She stayed through the morning. She cleaned the child, wrapped him in her own cloak, and held him while Elara slept fitfully. When the sun climbed higher, she stepped outside and saw the truth written in the faces of those who passed. No one came to help. No one even looked. By midday, Elara was gone. She had slipped away while Rowan was gathering water, leaving nothing behind but silence and a child too small to understand he had been abandoned twice in one day. Rowan stood alone in the empty hut, the boy asleep in her arms. She had no husband. No children of her own. No claim to this life she now held. But when she looked down at his face, so calm now, so trusting, she made a choice that would bind her to him more deeply than any blood ever could. She carried him home. And when the pack asked whose child he was, she said only, mine. 6 years passed like water through cupped hands. Kalen learned to walk in the shadow of Rowan's cottage, his small feet steady on the uneven forest floor. He learned to speak softly, to listen before acting, to carry wood without complaint. The pack children played in the village square, but Kalen played alone, building stick fences, naming the birds, watching the world with eyes too thoughtful for his age. Rowan taught him everything she knew. How to identify herbs by scent. How to mend a torn cloak with steady hands. How to stand tall when others looked away. And they did look away. The pack had long memories. They knew whose child he was, or rather, whose child he wasn't. No alpha had claimed him. No father's name had been spoken at his birth. He existed in the space between rejection and acceptance, tolerated but never welcomed. Rowan never spoke of it. She met their cold glances with calm indifference, their whispered judgments with silence. When the village women excluded her from gatherings, she tended her garden. When the men refused to trade fairly, she traveled further to neighboring settlements. She built a life where the pack's cruelty could not reach. But Kalen noticed. "Why don't the other children play with me?" he asked one evening, his hands muddy from digging in the garden. Rowan paused, her fingers stilling on the herbs she was bundling. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand." "What don't they understand?" "That family is not always made by blood." Kalen tilted his head, considering. "You're my family." "I am." "And my father?" The question came so quietly, Rowan almost missed it. She set down the herbs and knelt beside him, meeting his gaze. His eyes were dark, curious, without anger. "Not yet." "Your father is not here," she said carefully. "Did he die?" "No." "Then where is he?" Rowan chose her words the way she chose her steps in the forest, deliberately, with care. "He made a choice a long time ago. One he believed was right. But he left us." "Us." The word pierced deeper than any blade. "He did," Rowan admitted softly. "But you were never alone. You have always had me." Kalen was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned against her, his small hand resting on her arm. "I don't need him. I have you." Rowan wrapped her arms around him and held him close, her heart both full and breaking. She had given him everything she had, her home, her time, her fierce and relentless love. But she knew even then, that one day the past would come looking for what it had abandoned. And when it did, the life she had built would no longer be hers to protect. The rumors began like smoke, invisible at first, then impossible to ignore. Rowan heard them while trading herbs at the village edge. Whispers exchanged between merchants, fragments of conversation that stopped when she drew near. "The Alpha is returning. After all these years. What does he want?" She said nothing. She bought her bread, secured her basket, and walked home with her spine straight and her face empty of emotion. But her hands trembled as she closed the cottage door. Kalen looked up from the floor, where he was carving a wooden wolf. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He studied her with eyes far too perceptive for 7 years. "You're lying." Rowan set the basket down and exhaled slowly. She would not insult him with another denial. "There is talk in the village." "Old talk." "About my father?" Her silence was answer enough. Kalen's knife stilled against the wood. "Is he coming back?" "I don't know." "Would he want to see me?" The question was so carefully neutral, so devoid of hope, that Rowan's chest ached. She crossed the room and knelt beside him, brushing the wood shavings from his hands. "Listen to me," she said quietly. "Whatever happens, whoever comes or goes, you belong here. With me. That will not change. But if he's an alpha, then he is still only a man. And you are my son." Kalen searched her face, then nodded slowly. He returned to his carving, but his movements were stiffer now, distracted. Rowan watched him a moment longer, then rose and moved to the window. Through the trees, she could see the distant outline of the pack's main settlement. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Voices carried on the wind, louder than usual. Restless. The pack always grew restless when power shifted. That evening, a messenger arrived at her door, a young wolf she barely recognized, his posture stiff with discomfort. "The elders request your presence," he said without meeting her eyes. "Tomorrow at dawn." "For what purpose?" He hesitated. "They did not say." Rowan's jaw tightened. The elders had not spoken to her in years. They had been content to pretend she and Kalen did not exist, to let them live in exile without acknowledgement. If they were calling for her now, it meant only one thing. The Alpha's return was not a rumor. "Tell them I will come," she said evenly. The messenger nodded and disappeared into the dusk. Rowan closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding despite her calm exterior. She had known this day would come. She had prepared for it in 1,000 quiet ways, teaching Kaelin resilience, building a life that did not depend on the pack's approval. But preparation was not the same as readiness. Behind her, Kaelin's voice was small. "Will he take me away?" Rowan turned and found him standing in the center of the room, the wooden wolf clutched in both hands. She crossed to him and cupped his face gently. "No one will take you from me. Not without a fight." His eyes held hers, uncertain but trusting. And Rowan made a silent vow in the dimming light of their small home. The past could return all it wanted, but it would not take what she had protected. Dawn came cold and pale. Rowan left Kaelin with old Marin, the only woman in the pack who had ever shown them kindness. She did not explain where she was going. She simply kissed his forehead and walked into the mist. The gathering grounds were silent when she arrived. The elders stood in a half-circle near the ancient oak, their faces carved from stone and shadow. And beside them, taller than she remembered, stood a man whose presence made the air feel heavier. Alpha Aldrich Thornfell. He wore dark traveling clothes, his cloak dusted with road dirt. His beard was longer now, streaked with gray she did not recall. But his eyes, those she remembered. Sharp. Unyielding. The eyes of a man who had walked away and never looked back. Until now. Rowan stopped at the edge of the circle. She did not bow. "Rowan Hale," Elder Caddock began, his voice formal and brittle. "You have been summoned because—" "Where is the child?" Aldrich's voice cut through the elder's words like a blade through silk. Low. Controlled. Absolute. Rowan's gaze shifted to him. "Safe." "That was not my question." "It is the only answer you will receive." A ripple of shock moved through the elders. One did not speak to an alpha this way. Certainly not a woman with no rank, no mate, no protection. But Rowan had spent 7 years raising a child the pack abandoned. She had nothing left to fear from men who valued power over decency. Aldrich stepped forward. The elders parted instinctively. He stopped 3 paces from her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders. "I was told," he said slowly, "that my son died at birth." Rowan's expression did not change. "You were told many things. And you knew the truth." "I knew a child was crying in an empty hut. I knew his mother could not keep him. I knew the pack turned their backs." Her voice remained steady, quiet. "So I stayed." Something flickered in Aldrich's eyes, grief perhaps, or anger directed inward. "Why did you not send word?" To a man who rejected his mate before the bond could settle? To an alpha who disappeared without a backward glance? Rowan tilted her head slightly. "What would I have said?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Elder Caddock cleared his throat. "The alpha has returned to claim what is rightfully his. The bloodline must be—" "The bloodline," Rowan interrupted softly, "learned to walk without you. He learned to speak, to read, to survive. He has a home, a life, a mother." Aldrich's jaw tightened. "You are not his mother." "No," Rowan agreed. "I am the woman who stayed." The words landed like stones in still water. Aldrich held her gaze, and for the first time since his arrival, something cracked in his composure. Not anger. Not pride. Regret. "I want to see him," he said finally. "No. That is not a request. And this is not your decision to make." Rowan stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You do not walk back into a life you abandoned and demand anything. You do not claim a child you never held. Not until you prove you deserve to." The elders gasped. Aldrich's eyes darkened. But he did not move. "Then tell me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "what must I do?" Rowan studied him, this man who had haunted the edges of her life for 7 years, this ghost made flesh. "You start," she said quietly, "by earning the right to ask." Rowan left the gathering grounds without waiting for dismissal. She felt Aldrich's gaze on her back the entire walk home, heavy as a hand on her shoulder. But she did not turn. She had said what needed saying. The rest was his to carry. When she reached the cottage, Kaelin was waiting by the window. Was it him? He asked immediately. Rowan nodded, removing her cloak. Her hands were steadier than she expected. What did he say? That he wants to see you. Kaelin's face went very still. And what did you say? That he has not earned it yet. Something in the boy's posture softened. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude. He turned back to the window, watching the forest as though it might offer answers the adults could not. Rowan moved to the hearth and began preparing tea, letting the familiar ritual calm her racing thoughts. She had faced the Alpha. She had drawn her line. And now, a knock at the door. Firm. Deliberate. Rowan's hands stilled. She glanced at Kaelin, who had gone rigid. Stay here, she said softly. She opened the door to find Aldrich alone, without the elders, without ceremony. He stood at the threshold like a man seeking shelter, not demanding entry. I did not come to force my way in, he said before she could speak. I came to tell you the truth. The one I only learned today. Rowan's fingers tightened on the doorframe. What truth? That I was lied to. His voice was rough, scraped raw. 7 years ago, the elders came to me with a prophecy. They said my mate carried a curse. That if I completed the bond, the child would bring destruction to the pack. That the only way to save them both was to reject her before it settled. Rowan's breath caught. I believed them, Aldrich continued, his gaze never leaving hers. I thought distance would protect her. That rejection was mercy. I left to keep them safe. And never returned to check if they were. I was told she died in childbirth. That the child died with her. His jaw worked. I mourned them both. For 7 years, I believed they were gone. Who told you otherwise? A traveling merchant. He spoke of a woman raising a boy alone on the edge of Thornwood territory. A boy with dark eyes and my blood. Aldrich's hands curled into fists at his sides. I came back to find the truth. And the elders tried to turn me away at the border. Rowan studied him carefully. His grief looked genuine. His anger, earned. But grief did not erase absence. So you were manipulated, she said quietly. Lied to. Kept away by men who feared your power. She paused. That does not change what Kaelin lived through. It does not undo 7 years of wondering why his father did not want him. Aldrich flinched as though struck. You are right, he said after a long moment. It changes nothing. But I needed you to know, I did not abandon him by choice. I abandoned him because I was a fool who trusted the wrong counsel. Behind Rowan, a small voice spoke. You're my father? Both adults turned. Kaelin stood in the center of the room, his wooden wolf still clutched in one hand. His face was pale but composed, his eyes fixed on Aldrich with an intensity that made him look far older than 7. Aldrich's breath left him in a rush. Yes, he said hoarsely. I am. Kaelin looked between them, Rowan, who had raised him, Aldrich, who had not. Why did you come back? The boy asked. Because I learned you were alive. Would you have come back if you hadn't? The question was so direct, so unflinching, that Aldrich seemed to lose his words. Rowan watched him struggle, and in that silence, she saw the measure of the man. Finally, Aldrich knelt, bringing himself to the child's level. I do not know, he admitted. And that is something I will have to live with. Kaelin nodded slowly, as though this honesty mattered more than any promise. Mother says you have to earn the right to know me, he said. She is correct. Then I suppose you should start trying. And with that, Kaelin turned and walked back to his carving, leaving 2 adults standing in the wreckage of what might have been. Aldrich did not return to the Alpha's keep that night. He made camp at the forest's edge, far enough from the cottage to respect Rowan's boundaries, close enough to be found if needed. The pack whispered about it, an Alpha sleeping rough like a common wolf, but he ignored them. He had ignored too much already. The next morning, Rowan found firewood stacked neatly by her door. Split evenly, dried properly, enough to last a week. She stared at it for a long moment before carrying it inside without comment. The day after, her garden gate, broken for months, was repaired. The hinges oiled. The latch secure. Aldrich was never there when she looked. But his scent lingered in the early morning air. Kaelin noticed. He fixed the gate, the boy said, running his fingers along the smooth wood. He did. Why doesn't he knock? Rowan paused in her weeding. Because he knows he is not welcome yet. But he wants to be. Wanting and deserving are not the same thing. Kaelin considered this, then returned to his chores. But Rowan saw him glance toward the forest more than once, searching for movement in the shadows. On the third day, Aldrich appeared at midday. Rowan was hanging laundry when she caught his scent. She turned to find him standing at the tree line, a deer slung over his shoulders. Fresh kill. Clean. He approached slowly, stopping well before the cottage boundary. For your winter stores, he said simply. If you will accept it. Rowan studied him. He looked more ragged than before. Sleeping outside was taking its toll. But his eyes were clear, determined. Leave it by the smokehouse, she said finally. He nodded and did as instructed, then turned to leave. Aldrich. He stopped. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because I cannot undo 7 years. But I can begin with today. He disappeared into the forest before she could respond. That evening, Kaelin asked his first question. They were eating dinner when he set down his spoon and looked at Rowan. Does he know how to carve? Your father. Kaelin nodded, glancing at the wooden wolf he'd been working on for weeks. Rowan's chest tightened. It was the first time the boy had referred to Aldrich as anything other than him. I do not know, she admitted. Would you like to ask him? Kaelin's hands twisted in his lap. Maybe. If he comes back. He will come back. How do you know? Because he is not running anymore. 3 days later, Aldrich brought herbs Rowan had been unable to find. Rare, expensive, useful for winter sickness. He left them without a word. Then leather for Kaelin's worn boots. Then clay for the cracked water jug. Never asking for entry. Never demanding recognition. Just, present. Rowan watched from the window as he worked at the edge of the clearing one morning, repairing the section of fence the last storm had damaged. His movements were efficient, practiced. He did not look toward the cottage, did not seek acknowledgement. He simply did what needed doing. Kaelin stood beside her, his wooden wolf finished now, smooth and detailed. He is trying, the boy said softly. He is. Do you think he means it? Rowan placed a hand on her son's shoulder. I think he is learning what it means to be a father. Not through blood or title, but through action. Kaelin was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his carving and walked to the door. Rowan's heart jumped. Kaelin. I am just going to watch him work, the boy said, glancing back. You said he has to earn it. I want to see if he can. And before Rowan could stop him, or perhaps decide if she even should, Kaelin stepped outside and walked slowly toward the man who had been a stranger until a week ago. Aldrich's hands stilled on the fence post. He turned, and his expression shifted, surprise, then something raw and unguarded. Kaelin stopped a few paces away. Mother says you are trying. I am. Can I watch? Aldrich's throat worked. If you wish. Kaelin sat on a nearby stump, the wooden wolf cradled in his lap. And Aldrich returned to his work, slower now, more careful, as though afraid any sudden movement might shatter the fragile thing growing between them. From the window, Rowan watched. And for the first time in 7 years, she allowed herself to hope. 2 weeks passed before Rowan told Kaelin the full truth. She waited until evening, when the fire burned low and the world outside had gone quiet. Kaelin sat cross-legged on the floor, teaching Aldrich how to carve, their hands moving in careful synchronization, wood shavings gathering at their feet. It had become their ritual. Every evening, Aldrich would arrive at dusk. Kaelin would bring out his tools. And they would sit in comfortable silence, building something neither could name. But tonight, Rowan could wait no longer. Kaelin, she said softly, there is something you need to know. Both sets of hands stilled. The boy looked up, his dark eyes searching hers. He set down his knife carefully. About my father? Yes. Aldrich started to rise. I should. Stay, Rowan said firmly. You are part of this. He settled back slowly, tension visible in every line of his body. Rowan knelt beside Kaelin, taking his hands in hers. You asked me once why your father left. I told you he made a choice he believed was right. Kaelin nodded. That was true. But it was not the whole truth. She drew a steady breath. Your father was told that staying would put you in danger. The pack elders convinced him that leaving was the only way to protect you and your mother. The boy's brow furrowed. Was it true? No, Aldrich said quietly. It was a lie meant to control me. To keep me away. Why would they do that? Because they feared what I might become if I had a family to protect, Aldrich said. An alpha with something to lose is harder to manipulate. Kaelin processed this slowly, his young mind working through layers of deception. So you left to save us. But you were wrong. I was. And they lied. They did. And my mother, my birth mother, she could not keep you, Rowan said gently. The rejection broke something in her. She loved you, but she could not stay. Kaelin's eyes glistened, but he did not cry. So you chose me instead. I chose you, Rowan confirmed. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. The boy looked between them, the woman who raised him, the man who abandoned him. What happens now? He asked. Rowan squeezed his hands. That is your choice to make. Not mine. Not his. Yours. Kaelin pulled away slowly and stood. He walked to the window, staring out at the darkening forest. If I choose to know him, he said carefully, does that mean you stop being my mother? Rowan's voice broke. Never. And if I choose not to? Aldrich spoke before Rowan could. Then I will accept it. And I will still be here, at the forest edge, fixing what breaks, providing what I can. Because that is what a father should do, whether or not his son claims him. Kaelin turned, studying Aldrich with an intensity beyond his years. You stayed away for 7 years. I did. You missed everything. I know. You cannot get that back. No, Aldrich said, his voice rough. I cannot. Kaelin crossed the room and stopped directly in front of him. I do not need a father who is an alpha. I need one who will stay. Then I will stay. Even when it is hard. Especially then. The boy held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded once, decisive, final. Then you can stay, Kaelin said. But mother comes first. Always. Aldrich's eyes shone. Always. Kaelin looked at Rowan. Is that acceptable? She could not speak. She could only nod, tears streaming freely now. Kaelin returned to his carving tools and picked up the wooden wolf. He held it out to Aldrich. I made this for you, he said quietly. Before I knew you were trying. Before I knew the truth. He paused. I think you should have it anyway. Aldrich took the carving with trembling hands. I will treasure it. It is not forgiveness, Kaelin clarified. Not yet. It is just a beginning. A beginning is more than I deserve. Kaelin settled back onto the floor and picked up a fresh piece of wood. Then do not waste it. And Aldrich, humbled and grateful, sat beside the son he had lost and found again, carving in silence, building trust one careful cut at a time. Word spread quickly. The Alpha was not returning to the keep. He was living at the forest edge, spending his evenings with the rejected woman and her boy. The pack did not know what to make of it. Elder Caddock tried to call a council meeting. Aldrich ignored the summons. Lady Thorne sent formal invitations to pack gatherings. Aldrich declined them all. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but Aldrich remained where he was, at the boundary between exile and belonging, earning his place one day at a time. It was Rowan who finally forced the confrontation. She walked into the village square at midday, Kaelin at her side, Aldrich trailing a respectful distance behind. The market fell silent as they passed. Rowan stopped in the center and spoke loud enough for all to hear. 7 years ago, this pack abandoned a child because he had no father to claim him. You turned away from a woman in need because she had been rejected. Her voice was steady, cold. You who preach about pack bonds and loyalty, you showed neither. Elder Caddock stepped forward, his face tight. The circumstances, Rowan cut him off, were that you lied to your alpha. You told him his mate and child were dead. You kept him away with false prophecies and manipulations. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That is a serious accusation, Caddock said carefully. It is the truth, Aldrich said, moving to stand beside Rowan. And I have proof. Letters from the merchant who brought me word. Testimonies from wolves who witnessed your deception. The elder's face went pale. You kept me from my son, Aldrich continued, his voice lethal in its calm. You allowed Rowan to struggle alone, to be cast aside, to raise him without support, all to maintain your control over me. The crowd murmured, angry now, uncertain. Rowan spoke again, her voice cutting through the noise. But this is not about vengeance. This is about acknowledgement. She placed her hand on Kaelin's shoulder. This child survived because I chose to stay. He thrived because I loved him. And he became strong because he never learned to hate. She looked directly at Caddock. You took 7 years from us. You cannot give them back. But you can admit what you did. The elder's jaw worked. Around him, other elders shifted uncomfortably. The prophecy was real, Caddock said finally. We believed. There was no prophecy, Aldrich interrupted, his voice like iron. There was only your fear that I would choose my family over your counsel. That I would become an alpha you could not control. Silence fell heavy over the square. Kaelin stepped forward, his small voice clear in the stillness. My mother raised me alone. She taught me to be kind when you taught me I was unwanted. She gave me a home when you gave me nothing. He looked around at the gathered pack, meeting eyes that had always looked away. She is not rejected, Kaelin said firmly. She never was. You were wrong. The words landed like stones. One by one, pack members began to lower their heads, not in submission, but in shame. Elder Caddock stood rigid, his authority crumbling around him. Finally he spoke, his voice hollow. We were mistaken. You were cruel, Rowan corrected quietly. And now you will live with that knowledge. She turned to address the pack. I ask nothing from you. No apologies, no reparations. But you will treat my son with the respect he has always deserved. And you will remember, the next time you turn away from someone in need, what your silence costs. She took Kaelin's hand and began to walk away. Aldrich remained behind a moment longer, his gaze sweeping over the elders. I will not be returning to the keep, he said simply. My place is with my family. The pack will govern itself, or choose new leadership. I am done following men who mistake control for wisdom. He turned and followed Rowan and Kaelin, leaving the elders standing alone in the center of the square, their power exposed as the hollow thing it had always been. As they walked home through the forest, Kaelin looked up at Rowan. They will treat us differently now, he said. Perhaps. Does it matter? Rowan smiled down at him. No. We were never waiting for their approval. Behind them, Aldrich walked in silence, humbled and grateful. No longer an alpha demanding obedience, but a man who had finally learned what truly mattered. The pack could keep its politics and hierarchies. He had found something worth far more. He had found home. Winter came gently that year. The cottage that had once held only 2 now sheltered 3. Aldrich built an addition. Small, modest, attached to the eastern wall. A room of his own, earned through months of presence, not demanded by right of blood. He asked permission before every change. He deferred to Rowan's routines. He learned Kaelin's rhythms, when the boy needed space, when he welcomed company, when silence meant peace and when it meant pain. It was not easy. There were moments when Kaelin flinched from Aldrich's hand, old instincts remembering abandonment. Times when Rowan's walls went up, protecting herself from the possibility of loss. Days when Aldrich's guilt threatened to drown him, when he could barely meet their eyes. But they stayed. All three of them chose to stay. One evening, as snow fell soft beyond the windows, Kaelin looked up from his carving. "Will you teach me to hunt?" Aldrich paused in mending a torn cloak. "Do you want me to?" "Mother taught me to track. To move quietly. But she says you know things she does not." Rowan glanced up from her sewing, a small smile playing at her lips. "I said you were better at the killing part. I did not say I approved." Aldrich's expression softened. "I would be honored to teach you, if your mother permits." "I permit," Rowan said. "But he comes home before dark. Always." "Always," Aldrich agreed. Kaelin grinned, a rare, unguarded thing, and returned to his work. Later, when the boy had gone to bed, Rowan and Aldrich sat by the fire. The silence between them had changed over the months, grown comfortable in ways neither had anticipated. "He is beginning to trust you," Rowan said quietly. "He is beginning to forgive me," Aldrich corrected. "It is not the same thing." "No. But it is enough." Aldrich stared into the flames. "I do not deserve this. Any of this." "Probably not." Rowan set down her sewing. "But Kaelin deserves a father who stays. And I." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I am tired of carrying everything alone." He looked at her then, truly looked, seeing the lines of exhaustion around her eyes, the weight she had borne without complaint for 7 years. "You should never have had to," he said. "But I did. And I would do it again." She met his gaze steadily. "That does not mean I am not grateful for your presence now." Something shifted in the space between them. Not romance, not yet, perhaps not ever. But partnership. Recognition. The slow building of something that might, in time, become more. "Thank you," Aldrich said simply. "For letting me stay. For giving me the chance to prove." "Do not thank me," Rowan interrupted gently. "Thank Kaelin. He is the one who chose to let you in." Aldrich nodded, humbled. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the forest in quiet white. Inside, the fire crackled and warmth settled into the worn wooden walls. For the first time since Aldrich's return, the cottage felt not like a refuge from the world, but like a home that held them all. The next morning, Kaelin woke early and found Aldrich already outside, preparing for their first hunt together. The boy stopped in the doorway, bundled in furs, his breath misting in the cold air. "Are you nervous?" Aldrich asked. "A little." "Good. It means you respect what we are about to do." Kaelin moved to stand beside him, looking out at the forest path. "Mother says you are staying. Truly staying." "I am. Even when I am grown. Even when I do not need you anymore." Aldrich knelt, bringing himself to the boy's level. "Especially then. Because family is not about need. It is about choice." He paused. "And I choose you. Every day. For as long as you will allow it." Kaelin studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I choose you too." He held out his small hand. Aldrich took it carefully, as though holding something infinitely precious. And together, father and son walked into the forest, not as alpha and heir, not as obligation and duty, but as two people learning to build trust one quiet morning at a time. From the cottage window, Rowan watched them go. She pressed her hand to the glass, her heart full of something she had not allowed herself to feel in 7 long years. Hope. Real and lasting. The kind that comes not from promises, but from presence. Not from grand gestures, but from showing up, again and again and again. Spring arrived with wildflowers and birdsong. Kaelin turned 8 in the quiet of their cottage, surrounded by the only family that mattered. Rowan baked honey cakes, his favorite. Aldrich carved him a bow, sized perfectly for growing hands. There were no grand celebrations, no pack ceremonies. Just the 3 of them, and it was enough. The boy had grown taller over the winter, his shoulders broader, his voice steadier. He moved through the world with a confidence that came not from power, but from being loved without condition. The pack had changed too. Slowly. Cautiously. Families who had once turned away now nodded in passing. Children who had excluded Kalen now invited him to play, though he often declined, content in his solitude. The cottage at the forest's edge was no longer a place of exile. It was simply home. Elder Caddock had stepped down. New leadership had emerged, younger wolves who remembered what cruelty looked like and chose differently. They did not beg Aldrich to return. They respected his choice to stay where he belonged. On a morning bright with sun, Rowan worked in her garden while Kalen and Aldrich sparred nearby with wooden practice swords. The boy was quick, clever, learning to anticipate rather than overpower. "Good," Aldrich said, blocking a strike. "But watch your footing." Kalen adjusted, grinning. "Like this." "Exactly like." The boy swept his legs out from under him. Aldrich landed hard on his back, the air rushing from his lungs. For a moment, there was shocked silence. Then Kalen's worried face appeared above him. "Are you hurt?" "I did not mean to." Aldrich started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that shook his whole frame. "You did mean to," he gasped. "And it was perfect." Relief flooded Kalen's features, followed by pride. He offered his hand and helped Aldrich to his feet. From the garden, Rowan called out, "The boy fights like his mother. Smart, not strong." "I heard that," Aldrich said, brushing dirt from his clothes. "You were meant to." Kalen looked between them, something warm and certain settling in his chest. This was family. Not the one he was born into, but the one they had built together, piece by piece, choice by choice. That evening, as twilight painted the sky purple and gold, the three of them sat outside the cottage. Aldrich whittled. Kalen read aloud from a book of old stories. Rowan listened, her hands busy with mending. "Mother," Kalen said suddenly, pausing mid-sentence. "Yes." "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in?" Rowan set down her sewing immediately. "Never. Not once. Even when it was hard. Especially then." She reached over and tucked a stray hair behind his ear. "You were never a burden, Kalen. You were a gift." The boy nodded, satisfied, and returned to his reading. Aldrich's hands stilled on his carving. He looked at Rowan across the space between them, and something unspoken passed between their eyes. Gratitude, recognition, the slow acknowledgement of what they had become to each other. Not mates. Not yet. Perhaps never in the traditional sense. But partners. Family. Two people who had chosen to build something lasting from the ruins of what might have been. When Kalen finished his chapter and went inside to sleep, Rowan and Aldrich remained. "He asked me today if I would stay forever," Aldrich said quietly. "What did you tell him?" "That I would stay as long as he wanted me. As long as you both did." Rowan was silent for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. "Then I suppose you will be here a very long time." Aldrich's breath caught. "Rowan." "I am not promising you romance," she said quickly. "I am not promising you anything except honesty. But you have earned your place here. With him. With." She hesitated. "With us. That is more than I ever hoped for." "Good. Because hope without action is just a pretty lie." She stood, gathering her things. "And we have had enough lies to last a lifetime." She went inside, leaving Aldrich alone with the stars and the knowledge that he had been given something infinitely precious. Not a second chance, but a first real one. Inside the cottage, Kalen slept peacefully, his wooden wolf on the shelf beside his bed. Rowan banked the fire and settled into her chair, a book open on her lap. And Aldrich sat outside a while longer, listening to the forest, feeling the weight of belonging settle into his bones. He had been an alpha once. Powerful, feared, obeyed. But here, at the edge of the forest, in a cottage that had weathered 7 years of hardship and love. Here, he was simply a man who had learned what mattered. A father who stayed. A partner who proved himself daily. A member of a family built not by fate or bond, but by choice. And that, he realized, was the truest power of all. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more werewolf tales of sacrifice, rejected mates, and second chances. Please like and share this story with someone who loves slow burn fantasy romance. Before you go, let me know below, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? This pack truly spans the world.